Is your wedding about to blow up your budget? Wait, you do have a budget, right? I was in conversation with someone the other day and we were talking about the fact that they were planning a wedding. And this reminded me of a blog that I wrote before, and I thought it'd be good to do a video on it. So, if you're planning your wedding and you right now you realize that things are starting to go over budget, I guess really we should take a step back. And the first thing is make sure you actually have a budget. Think about all the things that are important to you, and whether you're working on your own or with a wedding planner, whatever have a budget and for each item that's of importance. So like if you love flowers or the venue or um the dress that you're going to pick, whatever it is, have a budget for those items, at least an estimate of the amount that you think those things would cost. And try to stick to it. Or at least if something goes over, where are you going to pull back from somewhere else? So if you're looking at your wedding plans and you're realizing that everything is going over budget, there's still hope. Let's talk about some ways to fix it. So you have this really important event and you want to make sure that at the end of all the fun, you and your loved ones have enjoyed the day. You don't want to be financially stressed that you either overspent or maybe went into too much debt. A lot of times, if you think about it, there's things that we spend our money on that may or may not really matter later on in maybe 5, 10 years down the road when you look back at it. I know as women, a lot of times we will spend quite a bit on a wedding dress that we're never going to wear again. And is that worth it or not? I'm not sure. It depends on the person. Because I did buy a wedding dress that I can't even fit into anymore. And I'm not going to do anything with that dress anymore. But it felt worth it to me. And I didn't feel like I overspent. It was within budget. So you want to make sure at the end of it all that you don't feel like you just overspent, even though this is a very exciting time. You want to make sure that the decisions you make today are things that you're going to be happy with after it's all said and done. Here's some tips that you can use to get back on budget and avoid being financially stressed at the end. The first thing to do is to go back and look at your budget and see exactly where it is that you went over. Did you spend too much on flowers? Maybe you're trying to give guests a really good gift for when they leave and you really went over budget there. Could you revisit that? And then once you see where you went over, you really want to prioritize to see where can you cut back. If you don't really care about flowers, maybe having real flowers doesn't really matter to you. Maybe you're okay with like fake flowers. I don't know. Or maybe you're less concerned about a venue and it really doesn't matter. You're more concerned about just having the most amount of people that you can have at the wedding. That's something to think about too. So start to really jot down, where did I go over my budget? How can I fix it? And then prioritize it, just listing those things out. Maybe number one being the highest priority, that is, you're not budging on that, all the way down on your list so that you can see where exactly you might cut back. Best not to allow what's traditionally added into a wedding to be something that forces you to feel like you need it for your wedding. Not everybody needs a limo to get to their wedding and video themselves pulling up in a limo or a really nice vehicle. Some people may not even have that. We might not even know how you got to your wedding. Most guests are just inside waiting for you to come in. Or maybe you think everybody's looking at the table placements or what you put on the table for as far as flower arrangements. And maybe people don't really mind. And you could do something that's a little bit more simple and be able to get away with that. And I wonder if most people are going to notice that anyway. So it's really important to keep things that are important to you in mind. And if you really don't mind a dress, I've heard some people tell stories where they went to a consignment shop or they went to like a thrift store or they went somewhere and rented a dress for their wedding and that was fine with them. Or some people got a very simple dress and did like really great accessories and that worked for them as well. I actually know a couple that spent very little on the husband's tuxedo or suit. I don't know which one he got and her dress. And that was important to them. They wanted to be able to pay very minimal and they wanted to pay out of pocket. So you really have to just think about where could you cut back so that you stay within your budget. And honestly, that would be for anything that I would tell clients, whether we're talking about paying for a kid's school, something that involved, or putting a pool in the backyard or buying their next house. We want to stay in budget. And sometimes there are going to be trade-offs. So oftentimes it will. And even though like an open bar would be really important to some people, they don't even really drink. And the idea of providing people with an open bar or more than maybe just a couple alcoholic beverages is not something they're really that interested in. You can definitely shave back if that's your case. But open bar is pretty expensive. Another area that I sometimes see where people are prone to overspending is they just go over their guest list. So maybe they only said they wanted to have a small wedding and then it ended up being a big shindig. The list is so huge because you feel like there are people that you just have to invite. And everybody has to deal with that on their own. And if it really is somebody that you need to invite, then certainly do that. But maybe you don't have to invite people that you don't really have a rapport with. I've heard some people have a very intimate small wedding of 20 people, or maybe some people think 50 might be intimate. and they really enjoy that. Just the people that they really love were there, or even 15 people. But if your guest list is like 200 people and you intended for it to be 100 or 50, that's not good. That's probably an area that you're definitely over budget. So something to think about is just creating two lists. Maybe you have a list of A people that might make that list, and those are your definite people. And then there are people on the B list. So if there's more room in your budget, you can invite those people. Or if there's some people from your A list that aren't able to make it, you can certainly move on to your second list. And obviously, if you're working with a wedding planner, they're going to be able to help with things like this. But it's really important to think about where are you going over budget. And sometimes the number of people that you're going to have to come to the wedding is one of those places. Another area where you might cut back, and now this might be hard if you're a foodie like I am, but it's on the food items. But maybe instead of trying to focus on having so many different options, there's some people who might be vegan, some people who might only eat fish, you never know. But instead of focus on just look too many items on the list, perhaps just focus on a few items, maybe two or three items on the list, but they're high quality. But maybe you could spend a little bit less by not trying to offer just too much food. And maybe you're a do-it-yourself type person. You might be able to do your invitations on your own. Maybe you can put together little party favors or anything for the guests that you do on your own. Maybe as your centerpieces, you might use candles. I love candles, so that would be beautiful to me. You can really get creative if you think about some ways that you might be able to do some of the decor yourself. Or maybe have a friend who's pretty creative who might not be hesitant to jump in and just help you. And we all know that a venue that you choose could certainly break the budget, right? So you want to get creative about that. If you're very particular on a set venue that you want to have, maybe you look for their off seasons and see how much less expensive it is for you to go ahead and just have your wedding during their off season. So if there's a place that you're really stuck on, but it tends to be on the pricier side, perhaps opt to see if they have a day during the week where it might be a little bit less expensive. I know there are some places that you can go to that if you have it Monday through Friday, it might be a little less expensive. Sometimes even the time of day is another way to be able to save. Earlier in the day or later in the day, you just have to see when your particular venue is a little less pricey, and that's something that you might be able to do. And peak seasons, right? Like what time during the year is it a little less expensive? Always important. But have some different options for your venue because you certainly don't want to break the bank. But if it's truly important to you, obviously you could look some other ways to be able to save. But a venue is one of those things going to be right up there in terms of cost. And depending on the size of your wedding, some people opt for venues that maybe they rented out a home and that has a very beautiful backyard or just the interior is very beautiful. And depending on the number of people that could or could not work, but that's another way to get creative and just think of a venue in a little bit of a different way. Or maybe you're completely fine with doing something on the beach or something outdoors where it's a little less expensive, or maybe you're all about cathedral type feeling. So all those things will come into play and you can get a bit creative with your venue. And remember, if you do use a venue that usually has weddings or events, they will typically have chairs and flower arrangements or other type of decor that you could just use that and probably save quite a bit instead of trying to piece everything together yourself. Or maybe if there's some things that you don't like there, you still have the foundation or the base of what you need, and you can just add in a little bit. Something else to consider as far as your venue is whether or not you're going to have your ceremony and your actual reception in the same place. A lot of times that could save you money as well. So that's something to consider. All in all, what you really want to do is you want to stay on budget. You want to have a budget and then you want to try your best to stick to it. And just like if you were doing a regular house budget or personal budget or business budget, anything that you're thinking that you're going to have to purchase, you want to make some guesstimates in terms of how much those things might cost. And then if something else is coming up more expenses that is high on your list of priorities or must haves, then you have to see where you're going to cut back other places. If you have hired a photographer, do they need to be there for the whole event? Or maybe you minimize the amount of time they spend there. Maybe that saves you some money as well. And don't forget, you can use Excel or you can even use, I think, the KNOT has a way to be able to help you with budgeting as well. And I'm sure there are other resources for wedding planning where you could use to budget, keep up with things so that you can be just as excited at the end of the wedding after all things are done. You're not financially stressed and you had a really great time. So happy wedding planning.